This is the Ivory Tower from Swinburne University, today focusing on East Timor. Our relationship with East Timor over the last 50 years has been fraught. There have been plenty of highs, such as the independence referendum in 1999, and many lows, such as Australia's abandonment of the country before the Indonesian invasion in 1975. Professor Damien Kingsbury of Deakin University has been charting the bilateral relationship since the Second World War. He's talking here with Billy Jupp.
Damien, to start with, what impact did the Second World War have on the Australian-East Timor relationship?
The main impact that the Second World War had on the relationship with Australia and East Timor was that Australian troops were sent to East Timor prior to Japanese involvement in order to forestall the Japanese, what was perceived to be a Japanese invasion or impending invasion. But that actually attracted in Japanese troops, and as a consequence the Timorese people suffered very badly. Perhaps 40,000 Timorese died, both through Japanese atrocities because Timorese were supporting Australians, and also through Allied bombing raids. So the Timorese people suffered very badly. Having said that, there were some strong relationships built at that time, and they have sustained over the years.
What else can you tell us about Australia's involvement or lack thereof in East Timor during 1975, which was a pretty horrible period for the nation?
Well, in 1975, Australian foreign policy was predicated on the idea that small states were not viable. So when Gough Whitlam looked at Indonesia's impending occupation of East Timor, he said, go ahead, effectively, go ahead. Please try and do it nicely, give them a vote, whatever, but we're not going to stop you. So the Indonesians took that as a green light, also from the United States, and they launched an invasion. They tried a number of covert methods, which were unsuccessful, and then finally they said in December 1975, we're going to have a full-scale invasion. The consequence of that was, of course, that about 1/3 of the population lost their lives. And there were enormous atrocities committed in that time. Australia knew of those atrocities and remained silent. And I think that marked a significant betrayal of the Timorese people.
Can you shed any light on Australia's role in helping East Timor finally obtain independence as a nation?
Well, the United Nations brokered an agreement with Indonesia whereby the people of East Timor would be allowed a vote on their future. Indonesia was struggling at that time, its economy had collapsed, and the international community had the whip hand, if you like. The people of East Timor voted overwhelmingly for independence. Now, Alexander Downer had said in the middle of August 1999 that Australia would prefer to see East Timor remain within Indonesia. I was there when he said it. It was in Dili, in East Timor. And he also said, and if things turn badly here, you Australians who are here now, you're on your own. So the Australian position at that time was quite clear. It was only a couple of weeks later, after the ballot, and the violence and destruction which had been building up prior to the ballot just burst like a tidal wave, that the Australian people demonstrating, protesting in the streets, forced the hand of the government, and the government hastily put together a plan to send in Interfet, or at least to go in as part of a multinational coalition force called Interfet.
Was Australia involved in 1999 mainly to redeem themselves for their own shortcomings way back in 1975?
The purpose of Interfet was essentially to assuage domestic political concerns. It was to appeal to the Australian people, and it was remarkably successful. John Howard won a huge amount of kudos with the Australian public by becoming involved in that campaign, and indeed built a significant part of his subsequent political career on being a strong man on security issues, around asylum seekers, around involvement in Afghanistan and Iraq and so on. So that was his first international venture, and it was very successful for him. There was a disinclination by the government up until that time to become involved, but when they realised the political benefit they could get from it, they were much more enthusiastic. Look, for a period of time, Australia was regarded very favourably. For what's been presented as a betrayal was forgotten or was put to one side. And it was really only when the dispute over the Timor Sea arose from about 2004 that we really saw a falling out in the relationship and some bitterness creep back in. And what we've seen in that is the recalling of Australia's involvement in Timor in World War II, Australia's turning a blind eye to Indonesia's invasion and the atrocities that followed that, and that has resurfaced. So we won some favours, but what capital we built up at that time we've since squandered. Look, Australia's viewed differently by different people. I think the fact that Australia is East Timor's single biggest aid donor is significant, and the Timorese are well aware of that, and they want to maintain a good relationship. They want to quarantine the Timor Sea dispute from the wider relationship. They understand that maintaining a good relationship with Australia is critical to their future. They need a good relationship with Australia, with Indonesia, with Portugal, with the United Nations, with America, with China. Really, a small, vulnerable country like East Timor can only survive if it has as many good relationships as possible, and Australia is key amongst those.
So, Damien, if you really only had to use a couple of terms to describe Australia's behaviour in the relationship with East Timor, what terms would you use?
Contradictory. On one hand, we do provide a lot of aid and we are very supportive. On the other hand, we screw the country over through the unfair allocation of resources from the Timor Sea. Australia can be a regional bully and at times has acted like that, but at other times has acted very well. So inconsistency, I think, is the real descriptor of Australia's relationship with East Timor.
Damien Kingsbury of Deakin University speaking with SWINTV's Billy Jupp.